This is Silent Hill 2, Born from a Wish. And I got to say, there was someone made a comment some months back asking about a Born from a Wish analysis. And I really kind of overlooked it initially. And then when I started taking a closer look at this bonus game, I found some really awesome surprises. So I hope you guys enjoy this presentation. No other character in Silent Hill 2 is as complex, mysterious, or compelling as Maria. Out of every character in the game, none others seem to have so many questions and theories which surround them. She dies and is mysteriously resurrected several times over in Silent Hill 2. She is also deeply aware of the guilt and emotional turmoil that James Sunderland is going through. She offers to him certain truths with utmost confidence, and yet she remains completely insecure by herself, right? One of her greatest fears is being alone. And she seems quite confused about her true identity. Of the 7 character archetypes in storytelling, Maria represents the shapeshifter. And as this character, this archetype, it's quite a volatile type of character archetype. And it's by far the most interesting. It's the most elusive, right? The most mysterious. So it should be no surprise that the masterpiece that is Silent Hill 2 should include a bonus game that involves one of the most interesting characters of the entire series. A character which raises quite a few intriguing questions, as well as some very compelling possibilities. Does Born from a Wish provide us with some of those answers, as well as creating some of its own compelling questions of its own? I would say it most certainly does. So buckle up as we take a deep dive into Silent Hill 2, Born from a Wish. Silent Hill 2, Born from a Wish, of course, is a bonus game, and it's set as a prequel to the main story. It takes place just before James meets Maria at Rosewater Park. Now, I happen to think there are some good reasons for and against Born from a Wish being a prequel. So it may be worth exploring some of those possibilities as we go. I'm also, of course, interested in hearing your own theories on Born from a Wish. The ambiguity in Born from a Wish, first of all, goes much further than the timeline in the general story or the general game. And I think it adds to this particular game scenario's mystery, and it makes it more compelling and open to many different interpretations. I actually had quite a lot of fun with this researching for this presentation. So as many bonus scenarios are concerned, they often do add really not a lot, right? They don't add a lot of lore to the main game, as those smaller projects are often headed up by junior developers in order to gain some valuable experience. So it would be difficult to follow such a masterpiece like Silent Hill 2 as it is. So I didn't have very high expectations going into this one, I'll be honest. However, I can say that with Born from a Wish, while it certainly leaves the Silent Hill fan wanting more, as it doesn't nearly have all quite as much depth as the main game, it certainly does not feel like an afterthought either. It raises some very intriguing possibilities and even attempts to answer a few important questions about the main storyline. The most interesting part about this bonus game scenario is that it really has no obligation in the first place to follow the main story, which in some places it certainly does not. However, in other respects, Born from a Wish presents us with some rather startling possibilities that are worthy of our consideration. This analysis is going to explore several of these possibilities with the evidence found along the way, without presuming there's any one possibility that is the only one that's correct. After all, great art is subjective, and it's about exploring possibilities. It's not about shutting down ideas which don't conform to one specific view. This is a video game, after all, and the reason why Team Silent included several endings in the main game was to explore the possibilities, right? There is no canon ending, right? So let's start with the opening scene, right? We have Maria, and she picks up the revolver, and she's in this dingy dressing room in the back of Heaven's Night. She's apparently just woken up to find that everyone is gone. Although I find it curious, there's really, I don't know if she's just sleeping in that chair. That would seem uncomfortable. But everyone's gone except for those monsters. And Maria openly contemplates her options and expresses her greatest fears in this opening sequence. She lays it all out right there at the beginning. So we get a real good look into Maria's psyche, if she even has a psyche, right? There's all kinds of theories about Maria not being real, of course, right? So first of all, she says, I'm scared to die, so afraid of pain. So video games often don't remind us of our own fragile mortality like this, right? In fact, they often do quite the opposite. If you die in a video game, you just respawn and load from the last save point and continue on. But there's something about Silent Hill 2 which conveys quite well the fragile nature of human existence. Throughout this series, we shall see why Born from a Wish represents a sincere exploration on being human, as well as just being a great survival horror game. Even more telling than her fear of pain and death, however, Maria expresses her fear of being alone. And to me, this sentiment on loneliness is not quite Maria's alone. It's also coming from the psyche of James Sunderland as well. And you could also argue it's coming from Mary. After all, the premise of Silent Hill 2 is based on a man grappling with intense guilt and loss. In Born from a Wish, Maria seems quite unsure of herself and her reality, just like James Sunderland at the beginning of the main story. Maria is mirroring James, and she represents the anima of James Sunderland. However, as we shall see, some interesting alternatives begin to present themselves in this regard. Just like James is seeking Mary, Maria is seeking someone as well. And just like James, in the beginning, Maria finds herself wandering Silent Hill, looking for someone, anyone, as she drags her fears around with her along these haunted streets. Eventually, Maria finds her way to the Baldwin Mansion, which is adjacent to the Blue Creek Apartments in the main game. The mansion is only accessible in Born from a Wish, however, as James is not able to access this area. Here in the courtyard, amongst the monsters crawling about, Maria finds a human corpse lying on the ground, covered in blood. Maria next enters the Baldwin Mansion, where much of the story takes place. Encountering the corpse in the courtyard, by the way, seems quite an important bit of foreshadowing as this story develops. As Maria explores the mansion, she comes into the living room where she stops to look at the fireplace. Curiously, this fireplace has been blocked off with the words "Do not use" written on the cover. We'll get back to the fireplace a little later, of course. What is most important for now is you should ask the question, why is the fireplace blocked in the first place? What's the significance, right? And another thing worth noticing here is that you can see there's a big clue in front of the fireplace. There's a bunch of leaves scattered around, right? So that's a big clue. It's a little bit of foreshadowing too. And if you, I actually played this on with using a 1080p filter and that kind of stuff, and you can kind of see the details a little bit better. I'm guessing in a lot of versions you may not even see the leaves in front of the fireplace, but it's a very nice touch. After Maria walks up the stairs, she tries to open the door to the lounge, but the door abruptly closes and is locked. Maria is relieved to know that she's finally found another human being in Silent Hill. Her greatest fear of loneliness has been deferred, at least for now. The voice coming from behind the door, however, does not mirror Maria's sentiment at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The voice behind the door is Ernest Baldwin, whom is presumably the owner of the mansion. Ernest insists that he wants to be left alone. Despite his brusque and dismissive manner, Maria attempts to get closer to Ernest in some way. Remember, Maria's greatest fear is being alone, so she's going to do whatever it takes to not be alone. And it seems like Ernest is going to do whatever it takes to be alone. This scene is very interesting because Maria hesitates and looks around for a second before saying her name, right? She tells Ernest, "My name is Maria," right? And if I were to guess, it seems to me like she's about to say Mary, and she caught herself before saying it. This very same sort of identity confusion occurred many times in the main story between James and Maria, of course. After leaving Ernest alone for now, Maria, after their conversation, she's exploring the upper floor and finds a white board at the far end of the hallway. Next, Maria heads back down the stairs to the first floor of the mansion, and during her descent in the stairway, she hears a distinctive thud, followed by the pitter-patter of what sounds like a child's hurried footsteps. Upon Maria's return to the living room, she finds that the cover over the fireplace has been removed. Now, in my research, I did read one interesting theory, which mentions, you remember in the first exchange between Maria and Ernest, when he gives Maria his name, he says Ernest, and she shoots back Hemingway, right? There's a theory, apparently, that the theory goes that the thud heard in the stairwell as Maria's coming down is actually a shotgun blast, which is apparently some sort of twisted homage to Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway had a wife named Mary at the time that he shot himself. He was actually married, I think, 4 times. And the pitter-patter of the footsteps, according to this theory, were of his panicked wife finding him in the foyer after shooting himself with a shotgun. However, if you go back and watch this scene in Silent Hill, Born from a Wish, the noise does not sound like a shotgun at all, nor do the footsteps sound like those of an adult. So I would safely say that theory, interesting theory, but it doesn't quite fit. Maria discovers a ladder in the fireplace. So she comes up the fireplace, and of course this leads, she comes up the chimney. This leads to the inner garden. And the secret room is hidden on the 2nd floor. Originally, I had thought that maybe this would be on the roof, but if you look closely up the chimney, you can see there's a grate that kind of stops you from going all the way to the top. Now, clearly, this secret garden is very important to the inhabitants of this house, and it wasn't intended to be accessed by just anyone. This is a sacred place, to be sure. Here, Maria finds a red board and a blackboard. Something as surreal as climbing up a chimney and discovering a garden seems the sort of thing that might occur in a dream or within the deep confines of the unconscious psyche. After all, dreams are the language of the unconscious, where experiencing something so surreal or unusual like that would kind of make a little more sense. After collecting all 3 boards, Maria must place them in the correct position within the center of the tombstone to complete the puzzle. Upon closer inspection, the tombstone has a set of inscriptions upon it, which reads, "Along with you died joy. All that remains is despair and a future of meaningless tomorrows. But I will never give up. 1, to see your beautiful smile again. 1, to beg the blessings of the gods. I wait for that day. When the boards cover all sadness too will be covered. But until my dreams return to reality, I will have to swallow all the pain." Now, this epitaph was presumably written by Ernest Baldwin for his daughter Amy.